and welcome to Razz Reviews. Today I'm going to be reviewing the HBO series Westworld. And without spoiling the plot, all I'm going to tell you is that it's a sci-fi western fantasy show, and it's about a Wild West theme park that is inhabited by artificial intelligence, robots or hosts, and rich people can come to this park and do whatever they want to these hosts, and that's pretty much what I'm going to tell you about the story. The show is created by Jonathan Nolan and his wife Lisa Joy. And Jonathan Nolan is Christopher Nolan's brother, and he has co-written a lot of his films like The Dark Knight and Interstellar, so I was really excited going into this film because I like the Nolan style of filmmaking. And I can honestly say that I was not disappointed, and I really enjoyed watching the show, and I thought it was very interesting. So let's start talking about the top 3 things that I liked about Westworld. Number 3, the mood. The show has a very unique and consistent mood, and it establishes it through many different tools. One of these tools is the amazing soundtrack. The show kicks off with a really cool intro, and it has a very nice song which is part of the original soundtrack, which I found super interesting. It's such a beautiful melody, and from the get-go, the mood is established that way. Every time you hear that soundtrack, you feel like you are kind of in the show and in the mood of the show, so I thought that was really cool. They also incorporated a lot of well-known songs, but they changed them to fit into the show and to fit into the environment, and I really enjoyed it. So even though they used famous songs that we know, they still changed them and made them feel like they come from this world, which is really, really cool. The visuals are also pretty awesome in the park and in the headquarters of the park. In the park, you have all these long establishing shots, very reminiscent of the old Western style of filmmaking, which also helps contribute to the mood of the Wild Wild West. And also inside the headquarters, you get this really dark and gritty and cold atmosphere, and it reflects the nature of the people who work there, and it says a lot about who these people are. So the visuals were also part of establishing the mood and also giving you hints at the thematics that are involved in the shows. The costume and the set design also played a big part in establishing this mood. It was really impressive. I really liked the costumes, what people were wearing, the props, the set dressing, everything really looked awesome. So all in all, the show looks great, feels really unique, and you always knew you were in the world of Westworld when you were in it, which is a really nice thing for you because it keeps you engrossed and it keeps you connected to the show. Number 2, Anthony Hopkins. So Anthony Hopkins plays the role of Robert Ford, who is the owner and creator of Westworld. And Anthony Hopkins all over the show. I mean, he is at his prime. He is at his best in this show, and I really love this performance, and I'm such a fan of his character. He was this weird combination of John Hammond and Hannibal Lecter all rolled into one. You were afraid of him and didn't trust him, but at the same time you loved him and you were intrigued by him. Everything he said was so quotable. You couldn't take your eyes off of Anthony Hopkins in any scene. He stole the show for me, and I loved watching his performance. Speaking of John Hammond, something really interesting I found is that the original story was written by the same writer who wrote Jurassic Park, which is Michael Crichton, which I thought was really cool. When I thought about that, there are really a lot of parallels between Jurassic Park and Westworld. That's also something nice to look out for once you're watching the show. Number 1, the storytelling. This is speculative fiction at its best, where it's not about plot development, it's more about the exploration of the themes of the show. So a lot of times you don't find yourself watching a story in a linear way where A goes to B and then B does this and you react to that. It's more about watching and trying to discover what is going on, and at the same time you start thinking about the questions that the show asks, especially philosophical questions and especially thematic questions. This is also something that I personally love about science fiction, where you end up asking yourself the question, what is it to be human? When most of the time in science fiction you're not talking about humans, and not talking about humans kind of raises that question. And this is kind of how Westworld works. It doesn't tell you things, and by not telling you these things, you start asking questions. And it's a very interesting way. It's very engrossing, and I thought it was really cool. However, this style of storytelling can have its pros and cons, because there's a delicate balance that you have to maintain, and sometimes that balance doesn't work. So with that being said, let's start talking about the top 3 things I didn't like about Westworld. Number 3, bad security. This is a very small element that bothered me. It didn't ruin the enjoyment of the show, but it really got on my nerves. The security of Westworld is really bad. In the beginning, when the security team is introduced, you feel like they're this badass SWAT team who's gonna keep everything in check. However, a lot of times these guys fell short, and I really felt like I wish they didn't introduce them that way if they were gonna go that route. So they were a weak element in the story. Safe to say that none of these guys are gonna get Employee of the Month. Number 2, pacing issues. I felt the show should have been less than 10 episodes, to be honest. Sometimes in the middle of the season, I felt like it dragged on a little bit and got a little too slow and got a little bit too self-indulgent. I feel like the show was 10 episodes because it's an HBO show, and if it was condensed into maybe 7 or 8 episodes, I think it would have been stronger. Then every single episode would have packed a really big punch, and I wish it was done that way, because like I said, sometimes I kind of got a little bored in the middle. However, the things that they set up, when the setup had its payoff, the payoffs were really cool and definitely worth the wait. But at the same time, I think the pacing could have been done a little bit better if the season was shorter. The number one thing I didn't like about Westworld was the withholding of information. Remember that delicate balance I talked about? I like to call this the M. Night Shyamalan effect. M. Night Shyamalan ding dong. The M. Night Shyamalan effect is focusing too much on the twist at the end that you lose your way getting there, and the twist sometimes comes a little too late, or it raises too many questions and plot holes. Sometimes when you withhold too much information from the viewer, you keep the viewer at arm's length and they become distant from the story and from the characters, which doesn't help them really connect. Another negative implication of withholding the twist too long is that we as an audience have become smarter and we've become better at speculation and solving mysteries. So if they wait too long to reveal something to us, more often than not, we're gonna figure it out ourselves. And so when the big reveal happens, it doesn't have enough of an impact because we already kind of knew that it was coming. So in a sense, I felt that the creators of the show were like this little spoiled child who was withholding his toys from me and doesn't want to play with me. At the same time, it did not destroy the show for me. The show is still very interesting, it's still a lot of fun, and when the reveals happen, a lot of reveals I didn't see coming, which was shocking. Some I did see coming, but there were some that really surprised me, and I thought that was refreshing and really nice. So all in all, I really enjoyed watching this show. I thought it was very interesting and very smart and very well made. It has its pros and cons, but it still set up a really interesting story, and I can't wait to see season 2, and it's a definite must watch for anybody who likes science fiction or fantasy, or even people who aren't fans of the genre. I think they will still find something there. It's dark, it's gritty, it's courageous, and it's really artistic and very intellectual. So for that reason, I'm giving this show an 8.5. So, have you seen Westworld? What did you think about it? If you haven't, I hope I didn't spoil anything for you. I really tried and I couldn't really talk. And if you have seen it, please let me know in the comments below, but don't spoil it for other people. And as always, please like, share, and subscribe, and let me know what other reviews you'd like me to do next. See ya!